During a ceremony, a hero's hat fell. The president's response was nothing anyone expected. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel. Your subscription means everything to us and is the only way to ensure these incredible stories of courage and humanity reach a wider audience. It helps us continue our mission to share the voices of those who often remain unheard. So please hit that subscribe button now. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the grand ceremony. A crowd gathered, hearts beating in unison, eyes fixed on the stage. Among them stood a hero, adorned in a crisp uniform, his hat a symbol of honor and bravery. But as he raised his hand to salute, the unexpected happened. The hat slipped from his head, tumbling to the ground like a fallen star. Gasps rippled through the audience. The air thickened with tension, a shared breath held in disbelief. And then the president, a figure of authority and grace, stepped forward. What he did next was beyond anyone's imagination. The world watched, holding its breath, as a moment of vulnerability transformed into something profound. This was more than just a ceremony, it was a testament to the power of humility and respect in the face of unexpected adversity. The stage was set for an unforgettable moment that would echo in hearts across the globe. As the president stood on stage, the crowd remained in a state of stunned silence. This was not just an event to honor veterans. It had transformed into a defining moment for the nation. Marcus Taylor, the decorated war hero whose hat had fallen, felt a rush of embarrassment wash over him. His hands, which had once gripped weapons in defense of his country, now trembled slightly as he reached for the brim of his cap lying on the ground. "You see that? Even heroes have their fallible moments," whispered a middle-aged man in the audience to his wife, his voice tinged with a mix of humor and a touch of reverence. "Makes them more real, don't you think?" His wife nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's a reminder that they are human just like us," she replied softly, her heart swelling with admiration for the hero on stage. As the president placed Marcus's hat upon his own head, the collective breath of the audience was released in a wave of disbelief. Gasps turned into murmurs and murmurs into applause. The president's act was not just a quirky moment, it was a statement, a bridge connecting the military and civilian worlds, a gesture that spoke of shared burdens and collective honor. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, "this hat represents more than just one soldier's journey. It symbolizes the sacrifices made by many, the struggles endured by families, and the resilience of our nation." His words resonated deeply, wrapping around the audience like a warm embrace. Among the spectators, a young girl clutched her mother's hand tightly. "Mom, why is he wearing that man's hat?" she asked, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity. "It's because he respects him, sweetheart. It shows that he carries the weight of all those who served," her mother replied, her voice thick with emotion. But not everyone in the crowd was moved by this moment. In the back, a group of disillusioned veterans exchanged skeptical glances. "What's he trying to prove?" one grumbled, arms crossed defiantly. "We don't need pity, we need action." Another, older veteran shook his head. "No, it's more than that. This is about understanding. Maybe he really does care." His voice was gruff. But there was a flicker of hope in his eyes, a longing for recognition that had often eluded them. As the president continued, he spoke of the sacrifices made by the armed forces, of the families left behind, and the invisible wounds carried by those who had served. The crowd hung on his every word, some nodding in agreement, while others wiped tears from their cheeks. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. Marcus stood, his heart racing as he listened. The president was giving voice to everything he had felt but couldn't articulate. It was as if the weight of his experiences, the lives lost beside him, and the burdens he carried were being shared by a leader whom he had once viewed from a distance. A ripple of camaraderie began to spread through the audience. Strangers glanced at one another, smiles breaking through the tension. An elderly woman leaned on her cane, her eyes bright with pride. "He's a good man," she said to her husband, who nodded in silent agreement. Then a voice broke through the crowd, sharp and clear. "What about us? What about the ones who didn't make it back?" A young man stood up, his face flushed with anger. "We need more than words. We need support, we need help." The crowd fell silent once more. The joy of the moment overshadowed by the painful reminder of sacrifices still unrecognized. The president paused, recognizing the gravity of the young man's words. "You're right," he responded, his voice steady. "Words are not enough. I promise we will do more." Together, we will ensure that the sacrifices of our heroes are not forgotten, that our veterans receive the support they deserve. As he spoke, Marcus felt a shift within himself. The embarrassment of losing his hat faded, replaced by a sense of belonging, a connection to something much larger than himself. He had not only worn the weight of his past but had also become a symbol of hope for those around him. From the back of the crowd, a small child no older than 8 held a sign that read, "Thank you for your service." The innocence of the gesture struck a chord with Marcus, reminding him that amidst the chaos and pain, there existed a simple truth: gratitude. As the ceremony continued, the crowd transformed. People began to share their stories of loss and resilience, voices blending into a tapestry of shared experience. A once quiet moment had blossomed into a powerful conversation about healing, remembrance, and the importance of unity. The president stepped down from the platform, embracing Marcus in a gesture that spoke volumes, an acknowledgement of the hero's journey, the shared burden of service, and the promise of a brighter future. In that moment, the fallen hat had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in vulnerability there exists strength. The story of Marcus Taylor, the president, and the crowd would resonate far beyond that day, igniting conversations about support, recognition, and the shared responsibility of honoring those who serve. As the ceremony drew to a close, the audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that echoed through the air, a testament to the power of humility, respect, and the courage to unite in the face of adversity. As the applause faded, a palpable sense of camaraderie lingered in the air. The crowd, united in a moment of shared respect, began to disperse slowly, conversations bubbling around them. But just as the atmosphere shifted towards celebration and healing, a commotion erupted at the back of the gathering. A young woman, her face flushed with urgency, pushed through the crowd. She clutched a piece of paper tightly in her hands, her eyes darting nervously as she sought the president. The murmurs grew louder, curiosity piqued as people turned to watch her approach. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice rising above the chatter. "I need to speak to the president. It's urgent." The crowd parted, allowing her to reach the front where the president stood, still basking in the afterglow of the ceremony. He turned to her, surprise etched across his features. "What's the matter?" he asked, concern flashing in his eyes. The young woman took a deep breath, her emotions spilling over. "My brother, he's a veteran. He served 2 tours overseas. He came home but he's not the same. He's struggling and he's not getting the help he needs." The president's expression softened as he listened, the weight of her words sinking in. "I'm so sorry to hear that," he replied gently. "What can we do to help him?" But the young woman wasn't done. "It's not just him. There are so many veterans like him, suffering in silence. We can't just honor them with words. We need action. We need programs that actually work." Her voice broke and tears streamed down her face. "Please don't let this just be another ceremony." Her plea hung in the air, heavy with urgency. The crowd fell silent. The earlier joy replaced by a collective awareness of the harsh realities faced by many veterans. The president shifted, his demeanor changing from one of celebration to one of responsibility. "You're absolutely right," he said, his voice steady and firm. "We cannot simply pay lip service to the sacrifices made by our veterans. I promise you we will take action. We will work together to create a better system for our heroes." The crowd erupted in supportive cheers. Yet beneath the surface, a tension began to bubble. Among those cheering were some of the disillusioned veterans from earlier, their skepticism still fresh. "What's he really going to do?" one murmured to his friend. "We've heard promises before. Maybe this time it's different," the friend replied, uncertainty in his voice. "But can we really trust him?" The young woman, still visibly shaken, took a step back, her eyes scanning the crowd. "We need accountability," she shouted, her voice echoing through the gathering. "We can't let this moment fade away like so many before it." As she spoke, a middle-aged man stepped forward, his expression a mixture of anger and determination. "You think this is just about promises?" he challenged, pointing at the president. "We're tired of being used as political props. Where's the real support?" Gasps rippled through the audience as the reality of the man's words settled in. The president looked taken aback, but the fire in his eyes remained. "I hear you," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "And I promise you, I'm here to listen and change things." But the man wasn't finished. "And what about the families? The ones who've lost loved ones? What about them?" His voice trembled with pent-up frustration. The young woman nodded vigorously. "Yes, the families who are left behind. We need help for them too. This sudden shift in energy forced everyone, including the president, to confront their assumptions. This wasn't just a moment of celebration, it was a reckoning. The crowd, once united in applause, now faced a deeper truth. The struggle of veterans and their families went far beyond ceremonial honors. As the president looked out at the sea of faces, he realized that he had to do more than just promise action. He had to connect with these stories, to understand the pain and the challenges that lay behind the glimmer of medals and uniforms. "I will commit to a task force," he declared, his voice rising above the murmurs. "I want to hear from veterans, from families. I want to know your stories, your struggles, so that we can create real, lasting change." The crowd shifted again, the energy evolving into something palpable. Some were hopeful, others skeptical, but all felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't a simple ceremony anymore. It had transformed into a call to action, a platform for voices that had long been silenced. "Let's make this a movement," the young woman urged, her spirit ignited. "We can't let our brothers and sisters fall through the cracks any longer. We need a system that works for us." Her words resonated deeply, igniting a spark in the hearts of those listening. People began to cheer, and slowly the crowd rallied together, their voices rising in unison. "Action! Action! Action!" they chanted, the rhythm echoing through the venue. The president, moved by their passion, raised his hands again. "Let's meet, let's talk, let's take this fight together." In that moment, the fallen hat, once a symbol of embarrassment, had become a catalyst for change. The unexpected twist had forced everyone to confront their hidden assumptions about the power of words versus action. The crowd, once divided by doubts and frustrations, now stood united, ready to demand the respect and support they deserved. It was a turning point, a moment that would ignite a movement for veterans and their families, transforming the narrative from one of honor to one of accountability and action. As the ceremony drew to a close, a new chapter began, not just for Marcus, the president, or the young woman, but for every person who had ever worn the uniform or sacrificed alongside a loved one. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would no longer be silent. The echo of their voices would resonate far beyond that day, a powerful reminder that true honor lies in action, understanding, and unwavering support.